Part 1 of an essay on criticism. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. An essay on criticism by Alexandra Pope, Part 1.
'Tis hard to say if greater want of skill appear in writing or in judging ill, but of the two less dangerous is the offence, to tire our patience than mislead our sense. Some few in that, but numbers err in these. 10 censure wrong for one who writes amiss. A fool might want himself alone expose. None one in verse makes many more in prose. 'Tis with our judgment as our watches none go just alike, yet each believes his own. In poets as true genius is but rare, true taste is seldom the critics share. Both must alike from heaven derive their light, these born to judge as well as those to write. Let such teach others who themselves excel, and censure freely who have written well. Authors are partial to their wits, 'tis true, but are not critics to their judgment too? Yet if we look more closely we shall find most have the seeds of judgment in their mind. Nature affords at least a glimmering light. The lines, though touched but faintly, are drawn right, but at the slightest sketch if justly traced is by ill colouring but the more disgraced. So by forced learning is good sense defaced. Some are bewildered in the maze of school, and some made coxcombs nature meant but fools. In search of wit, these lose their common sense, and then turn critics in their own defense. Each burns alike who can or cannot write, or with the rivals when your next spite. All fools have still an itching to do right, and fain would be upon the life inside. If Mavius scribble and Apollo spite, there are who judge still worse than he can write. Some have at first for wits, and then poets past, turned critics next, and proved plain fools at last. Some neither can for wits nor critics pass as heavy mules, and neither horse nor ass. Those half-learned witlings, numerous in our isles, as half-formed insects on the banks of Nile. Unfinished things one knows not what to call, their generation so equivocal. To tell them would 100 tongues require, or one vain wit that might 100 tire. But you who seek to give a merit fame, and justly bear a critic's noble name, be sure yourself and your own reach to know how far your genius, taste, and learning go. Launch not beyond your depth, but be discreet, and mark that point where sense and dullness meet. Nature to all things fixed the limits fit, and wisely curbed proud man's pretending width. As on the land, while here the ocean gained, in other parts it leaves wide sandy plains. Thus in the souls where memory prevails, the solid power of understanding fails. Where beams of warm imagination play, the memory's soft figure melt away. One science only will one genius fit, so vast is art, so narrow human width. Not only bounded to peculiar art, but often those confined to single parts. Like kings, we lose the conquest gained before by vain ambition still to make them more. Each might his several province well command, would all but stoop to what they understand. First follow nature, and your judgment frame by her just standards, which is still the same, unerring nature still divinely bright, one clear, unchanged, and universal light. Life, force, and beauty must to all impart at once the source and end and test of art. Art from that fund each just supply provides, work without show and without pomp presides. In some fair body does the informing soul, with spirits feed, with vigor fills the whole. Each motion guides and every nerve sustains, itself unseen, but in the effect remains. Some to whom heaven in wits has been profuse, want as much more to turn it to its use. For wit and judgment often add strife, though men each other's aid, like man and wife. 'Tis more to guide than spare the muse's steed, restrain his fury than provoke his speed. The winged cursor, like a generous horse, shows most true mettle when you check his course. Those rules of old discovered not devised are nature still, but nature methodized. Nature, like liberty, is but restrained by the same laws which first herself ordained. Here her learned Greece her useful rules indites, when to repress and when indulge our flight. High on Parnassus top her son she showed, and pointed out those arduous parts they threwed. Held from afar a lofty immortal prize, and urged the rest by equal steps to rise. Just precepts, thus from great examples given, she drew from them what they derived from heaven. The generous critic fanned the poet's fire, and taught the world with reason to admire. Then criticisms the muse's handmaid proved, to dress her charms and make her more beloved. But following wit from that intention strayed, who could not win the mistress, wooed the maid. Against the poets their own arms they turned, sure to hate most the men from whom they learned. So modern apothecaries taught the art, by doctors' bills, to play the doctor's part. Bold in the practice of mistaken rules, prescribe apply, and call your masters fools. Some on the leaves of ancient author prey, nor time nor moths ever spoiled so much as they. Some dreary plains without invention's aid write dull receipts how poems may be made. These leave the sense they're learning to display, and those explain the meaning quite away. You then, whose judgment the right cause would stare, know well each ancient's proper character, his fabled subject scope in every page, religion, country, genius of his age. Without all this at once before your eyes, cavil you may, but never criticize. Be Homer's works your study and delight, read them by day and meditate by night. Thence form your judgment, thence your maxim spring, and trace the muses upward to their spring. Still with itself compared his text peruse, and let the comments be the mentor's muse. When first young Mero in his boundless mind a work stout outlast immortal Rome resign, perhaps he seemed above the critic's law, and but from nature's fountain scorned to draw. But when they examined every part he came, nature and Homer where he found the same. Convinced, amazed, he checks the bold design, and rules as strict his labored work confine, as if the staggerite overlooked each line. Learn hence for ancient rules are just esteemed to copy nature is to copy them. Some beauties yet no precepts can declare, for there's a happiness as well as care. Music resembles poetry in each, and nameless graces which no methods teach, and which a master's hand alone can reach. If well the rules not far enough extend, since rules were made but to promote their end, some lucky license answers to the rule. The intent proposed that license is a rule. Thus Pegasus, a nearer way to take, may boldly deviate from the common track. Great wit sometimes may gloriously offend, and rise to faults true critics dare not mend. From vulgar bounds we brave this other part, and snatch a grace beyond the reach of art, which without passing through the judgment gains the heart, and all its end at once attains in prospects. Thus some objects please our eyes, which out of nature's common order arise, the shapeless rocks or hanging precipice, but though the ancients thus their rules invade, as kings dispense with laws themselves have made. Moderns beware, or if you must offend against the precepts, ne'er transgress its end. Let it be seldom and compelled by need, and have at least the precedents to plead. The critic else proceeds without remorse, seizes your fame, and puts his laws in force. I know there are to whose presumptuous thoughts those freer beauties, even in them, seem false. Some figures monstrous and mishaps appear, considered singly or beheld too near, which, by proportion to their light or place, due distance reconciles to form and grace. A prudent chief not always must display his powers in equal ranks and fair array, but with the occasion and the place comply, conceal his force, ne'er seem sometimes to fly. Those oft as stratagems, which errors seem, nor is it Homer's not, but we that dream. Still green with bays, each ancient altar stands, above the reach of secular genius' hands, secure from flames, from envy's furious rage, destructive war and all-involving age. See from each clime the learned their license bring, hear in all tongues consenting peal ring, in praise so just let every voice be joined, and fill the general chorus of mankind. Hail, Bart triumphant, born in happier days, immortal heirs of universal praise, whose honors with increase of age grow, as streams roll down, enlarging as they flow. Nations unborn with mighty names shall sound, and walls applaud that must not yet be found. Oh, may some sparks of our celestial fire, the last, the meanest of your sons inspire, that on weak wings from far pursue your flights, glows while he reads but trembles as he writes, to teach vain wits a science little known, to admire superior sense, and doubt their own.
End of part 1. Two of an essay on criticism by Alexandra Pope. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Of all the causes which conspire to blind man's erring judgment and misguide the mind, what the weak head with strongest bias rules is pride, the never-failing vice of fools. What nature has in worth denied, she gives in large recruits of needful pride. For as in bodies, thus in soul we find what once in blood and spirit swelled with wind. Pride, wherewith fails, steps into our defense, and fills up all the mighty void of sense. If once right reason drives that cloud away, truth breaks upon us with resistless days. Trust not yourself, but your defects to know. Make use of every friend and every foe. A little learning is a dangerous thing. Drink deep, or taste not the Pierian spring. There shallow draughts intoxicate the brains, and drinking largely sobers us again. Fired at first sight with what the muse imparts, in fearless youth we tempt the height of art, while from the bounded levels of our minds short views we take, nor see the lens behind, but more advanced behold with strange surprise new distant scenes of endless science rise. So pleased at first the towering Alps we try, mount o'er the Alps and seem to thread the sky. The eternal snows appear already past, and the first clouds on mountains seem the last. But those attained we tremble to survey, the growing labours of the lengthened way. The increasing prospect tires our wondering eyes. Hills peep over hills, and Alps on Alps arise. A perfect judge will read each work of with the same spirit that the author write, survey the whole, nor seek slight fault to find, where nature moves and rapture warms the mind, nor lose, for that malignant dull delight, the dangerous pleasure to be charmed with wit. But in such lees as neither ebb nor flow, correctly cold and regularly low, that shunning fault one quiet tenor keep, we cannot blame indeed, but we may sleep. In with this nature what affects our hearts is nothing the exactness of peculiar parts. 'Tis not a lip or eye we beauty call, but the joint force and full result of all. Thus when we view some well-proportioned dome, the world's just wonder, and even thine old Rome, no single part unequally surprise, all comes united to the admiring eye. No monstrous height or breadth or length appear, the whole at once is bold and regular. Whoever thinks a faultless piece to see, thinks what ne'er was, nor is, nor e'er shall be. In every work regard the writer's end, since none can compass more than they intend. And if the means be just, the conduct true, applause in spite of trivial faults is due. As men of breeding, sometimes men of wit, to avoid great error must the less commit. Neglect the rules each verbal critic says, for not to know such trifles is a praise. Most critics, fond of some subservient art, still make the whole depend upon a part. They talk of principles, but notions prize, and all to one lovely folly sacrifice. Once on a time, La Mancha's knight, they say, A certain Bart encountering ring on the ray, discoursed in terms as just with looks as sage as e'er could Dennis of the Grecian stage, concluding all were desperate sots and fools, who thus depart from Aristotle's rules. Our author, happy in a judge so nice, produced his play and begged the knight's advice, made him observe the subject and the plot, the manners, passions, unities, what not, all which exact to rules were brought about, were but a combat and a list left out. What? Left the combat out? Exclaimed the knight. Yes, or we must renounce the Stagyrite. Not so, by heaven, he answered in rage. Knights, squires, and steed must enter on the stage. So vast a throng the stage can ne'er contain, then build anew or act it in a plain. Thus critics of less judgment than caprice, curious, not knowing, not exact, but nice, form short ideas and offend in art, as most in manners, by a love to parts, some to conceit alone their taste confine, and glittering thoughts struck out at every line, pleased with a work when nothing's just or fit, once glaring chaos and wild heap of wit. Poets, like painters, thus unskilled to trace the naked nature and the living grace, with gold and jewels cover every part, and hide with ornaments their want of art. True wit is nature to advantage dressed, what oft was taught, but ne'er so well expressed. Something whose truth convinced sight we find, that gives us back the image of our mind, as shades more swiftly recommend the light, so modest plainness sets off sprightly wit. For works may have more wit than does them good, as bodies perish through excess of blood. Others for language all their care express, and value books as women men for dress. Their praise is still, their style is excellent, the sense they humbly take upon content. Words are like leaves, and where they most abound, much fruit of sense beneath is rarely found. False eloquence like the prismatic glass, its gaudy colors sprayed on every place. The face of nature we no more survey. All glares alike, without distinction gay. But true expression, like the unchanging sun, clears and improves whatever it shines upon. It gilds all objects, but it alters none. Expression is the dress of thought, and still appears more decent, as more suitable. A vile conceit in pompous words expressed is like a clown in regal purple dress. For different styles with different subjects sought, as several gaps with country, town, and court. Some by old words to fame have made pretence, ancients in phrase, mere moderns in their sense. Such labored nothings in so strange a style, amazed the unlearned and made the learned smile. Unlucky as fungus so in the play. These spark with awkward vanity display what the fine gentleman wore yesterday, and but so mimic ancients wit at best, as apes are grandiers in their doublets dressed. In words as fashion the same rules will hold, alike fantastic if too new or old. Be not the first by whom the new are tried, not yet the last to lay the old aside. But most by numbers judge a poet's song, and smooth or rough with them is right or wrong. In the bright muse, though thousands charm conspire, her voice is all these tuneful fools admire. Who haunts Parnassus but to please their ear, not mend their minds, as some to church repair. Not for the doctrine, but the music there, these equal syllables alone require. The often the ear, the open vowels tire, while expletives their feeble age do join. And 10 low words oft creep in one dull line, while they ring round the same unvaried chimes, with such returns of still expected rhymes. Wherever you find the cooling western breeze, in the next lines it whispers through the trees. If crystals, streams with pleasing murmurs creep, the reader's threatened not in the vain with sleep. Then at the last and only couplet fraught with some unmeaning thing they call a thought, a needless Alexandrian, ends the song, that, like a wounded snake, drags its slow strength along, leaves such to tune their own dull rhymes, and know what's roundly smooth or languishingly slow, and praise the easy vigor of a line, where Dendrum's strength and Waller's sweetness join. True ease in writing comes from art, not chance, as those move easiest who have learned to dance. 'Tis not enough, no harshness gives offend, the sound must seem an echo to the sense. Soft is the strain when zephyr gently blows, and the smooth stream in smoother numbers flow. But when loud surges lash the sounding shore, the hoarse rough verse should like the torrent roar. When Ajax strives some rock's vast weight to throw, the lion who labors and the words move slow. Not so when swift Camille scores the plain, flies over the unbending corn and skims along the main. Hear how Timotheus varied lays surprise, and Bill alternates passions fall and rise. While at each chance the sun of Libya and Jove now burns with glory and then melts with love. Now his fierce eyes with sparkling fiery glow, now sighs stills out and tears begin to flow. Persians and Greeks, like turns of nature found, and the world's victor stood subdued by sound. The power of music all our hearts allow, and what Timotheus was is Triton now. Avoid extremes, and shun the faults of such who still are pleased too little or too much, at every trifle scorn to take offence, that always shows great pride or little sense. Those heads or stomachs are not sure the best, which knows it all and nothing can digest. Yet let not each gay turn their rapture move, for fools admire, but men of sense approve. As things seem large, which we through mist decry, dullness is ever apt to magnify. Some foreign writers, some our own despise, the ancients only, or the moderns prize. Thus wit like fate by each man is applied to one small sect, and all are damned beside. Meanly they seek the blessings to confine, and force that sun but on the part to shine, which not alone the southern wit sublimes, but ripens spirits in cold northern climes, which from the first has shone on ages past, and lights the present, and shall warm the last. Though each may feel increases and decays, and see now clearer and now darker days. Regard not then if wit be old or new, but blame the false and value still the true. Some ne'er advance a judgment of their own, but catch spreading notion of the town. They reason and conclude by precedent, and own still nonsense which they ne'er invent. Some judge of authors' names, not works, and then nor praise nor blame the writing, but the man. Of all these several earths, the worst is he that in proud dullness joins with quality, a constant critic at the great man's board, to fetch and carry nonsense for my lord. What woeful stuff this madrigal will be in some starved hackney's sonneteer or me! But let a lord once own the happy lines, how the wit brightens, how the styles refines. Before his sacred name flies every fault, and each exalted stanza teems with thought. The vulgar thus through imitation err, as oft the learned by being singular, so much the scorn the crowds, that if the throng by chance go right, they purposely go wrong. So charismatics the plain believers quit, and are but damned for having too much wit. Some praise at morning what they blame at night, but always think the last opinion right. Amused by this is like a mistress used, this hour she's idealized, the next abused, while their weak heads, like towns unfortified, twixt sense and nonsense daily change their mind. Ask them the cause, still wiser still they say, and still tomorrow wiser than today. We think our fathers fools, so wise we grow. Our wiser sons no doubt will think us so. Once school divines, these zealous owls overspread, who knew most sentences was deepest read, faith, gospel all seemed made to be disputed, and none had sense enough to be confuted. Scotus, Thomas now in peace remain, amidst their kindred cobwebs in dark flame. If fate itself had different dresses worn, what wonder modes in wit should take their turn, oft leaving what is natural and fit. The current folly proves the ready wit, and authors think their reputation safe, which lines as long as fools are placed to laugh. Some valuing those of their own side or mind, still make themselves the measure of mankind. Fondly we think we honor merits then, when we but praise ourselves in other men. Parties in wit attend on those of state, and public faction doubles private hate. Pride, malice, folly against strident rows, in various shapes of parsons' critics' bows. Some sense survived when Mary's jests were past, for rising merits will buy us up at last. Might he return and bless once more our eyes, new Blackmores and new Milbournes must arise. Nay, should great Homer lift his awful head, Zoilus again would start up from the dead. Envy will merit as its shade pursues, but like a shadow proves the substance true. For envied with, like Sol eclipsed, makes known the opposing bodied grossness, not its own. When first that sun to powerful beams display, it draws up vapours which obscure its rays. But even those clouds at last adorn its ways, reflect new glories, and augment the day. Be thou the first true merit to befriend, his praise is lost whose days still all command. Short is the date, alas, of modern rhymes, and 'tis but just to let them leave bedtime. No longer now that golden age appear, when patriots' wits survived 1,000 years. Now in length of fame our second life is lost, and bare threescore is all even that can boast. Our sons their fathers' failing language see, as such Chaucer is shall Dryden be. So when the faithful pencil has designed some bright idea of the master's mind, where a new world leaps out of his command, and ready nature waits upon his hand, when the ripe colours soften and unite, and swiftly melt into just shade and light, when mellowing years their full perfection give, and each bold figure just begins to leave the treacherous colours the fair art betray, and all the bright creations fade away. Unhappy with, like most mistaken things, athons not for that envy which it brings. In youth alone its empty praise we boast, but soon the short-lived vanity is lost. Like some fair flowing the early spring supplies, that gaily blooms, but even in blooming dies. What is this wit which most our cares employ? The owner's wife that other men enjoy. Then most our troubles stilled when most admired, and still the more we give, the more required. Whose fame with pains we got, but lose with ease. Sure some to vex, but never all to please. 'Tis what the vicious fear, the virtuous shun. By fools 'tis hated, and by knaves undone. If wit so much from ignorance undergo, ah, let not learning to commend its foe. Of old those met rewards who could excel, and such were praised who but endeavoured well. Though triumphs were to generals only due, crowns were reserved to grace the soldiers too. Now they who reach Parnassus' lofty crowns employs their pains to spurn some others down. And while self-love each zealous writer rules, contending with becoming the spots of fools, but still the worst wit most regret commands, for each ill author is as bad a friend. To what base ends, and by what abject ways, are authors urged to sacred loss of praise? Ah, ne'er so dire a thirst of glory boast, nor in the critics let the man be lost. Good nature and good sense must ever join. To err is human, to forgive divine. But if in noble minds some dregs remain, not yet purged off of spleen and sore disdain, discharge that rage on more provoking crimes, nor fear a death in these flagitious times, nor pardon while obscenity should find, though with an art conspire to move your mind, but dullness with obscenity must prove as shameful sure as impotence in love. In the fat age of pleasure, wealth and ease, sprung the ranks with and thrived with large increase, when love was all an easy monarch's care, seldom at council, never in a war. Guilt ruled the state, and statesmen based writs. Nay, wits had pensions, and young lords had wit. The fair sat panting at the courtier's play, and not a mask went unimproved away. The modest fan was lifted up no more. The virgins smiled at what they blushed before. The following license of a foreign reign did all the dregs of bold Socinius drain. Then unbelieving priest reformed the nation, and taught more pleasant methods of salvation, where heaven's free subjects might their rights dispute, lest God himself should seem too absolute. Pulpits their sacred satire learned to spare, and vice admired to find a flatterer there. Encouraged thus, wit's titans braved the skies, and the press groaned with license blasphemous. These monsters critics with our darts engaged, here point your thunder and exhaust your rage, yet shun their fault, who scandalously nice will needs mistaken and author into vice. All seem infected, that infected spy, as all looks yellow to the jaundiced eye. End of part 2. Of an essay on criticism by Alexandra Pope. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Learn then what moral critics ought to show, for 'tis but half a judge's task to know. 'Tis not enough, taste, judgment, learning join. In all you speak, let truth and candor shine. That not alone what to your sense is due, all may allow, but seek your friendship too. Be silent always when you doubt your sense, and speak though sure with seeming diffidence. Some positive persistent fops we know, who if once wrong, will needs be always so. But you with pleasure on your errors past, and make each day a critic's on the last. 'Tis not enough your counsel still be true. Blunt truths more mischief than nice falsehoods do. Men must be taught as if you taught them not, and things unknown proposed as things forgot. Without good breeding, truth is disapproved. That only makes superior sense beloved. Be niggard of advice on no pretence, for the worst avarice is that of sense. With means complacent, ne'er betray your trust, nor be so civil as to prove unjust. Fear not the anger of the wise to raise. Those best can bear reproof who merit praise. 'Twere well might critics still this freedom take, but Appius reddens as each word you speak, and stares tremendous with a threatening eye, like some fierce tyrant in old tapestry. Fear most to task an honorable fool, whose right it is uncensured to be dull. Such without wit are poets when they please, as without learning they can take degrees, leave dangerous truths to unsuccessful satires, and flattery to fulsome dictators, whom when they praise the world believes no more than when they promise to give scribbling o'er. 'Tis best sometimes your censure to restrain, and charitably let the dull be vain. Your silence there is better than your spite, for who can rail so long as they can write? Still humming on, their drowsy course they keep, and lashed so long, like tops are lashed to sleep. False steps but help them to renew the race, as after stumbling jades will mend their pace. What crowds of these, impertinents bold, in sounds and jiggling syllables grown old, still run on poets in a raging vein, even to the dregs and squeezing of the brain, strain out the last dull droppings of their sense, and rhyme with all the rage of impotence. But shameless bards we have, and yet 'tis true, there are as mad abandoned critics too. The book full, blockheads ignorant read, with loads of learned lumber in his head, with his own tongue still edifies his ears, and always listening to himself appears. All books he reads and all he reads seals, from Dryden's fables down to Duffy's tales. With him most authors steal their works, or buy. God did not write his own dispensary. Name a new play, and he's the poet's friend. Nay, showed his faults, but when would poets mend? So place so sacred, from such fobs is buried. Nor is Paul's church more safe than Paul's churchyard. Nay, fly to authors, there they'll talk you dead. For fools watching where angels fear to tread, distrusting sense with modest caution speak. It still looks home, and short excursion makes, but rattling nonsense in full volley breaks, and never shouting, never turned aside, burst out, resistless, with the thundering tide. But where's the man who counsels can bestow, still pleased to teach, and yet not proud to know, unbiased or by favor or by spite, not dully prepossessed, not blindly right, though learned, well bred, and though well bred, sincere, modestly bold and humanly severe, who to a friend his faults can freely show, and gladly praise the merit of a foe, blessed with a taste exact yet unconfined, a knowledge both of books and humankind, generous converse, a soul exempt from pride, and love to praise with reason on his side. Such once were critics, such the happy few Athens and Rome in better ages knew. The mighty Stagyrite first left the shore, spread all his sails, and thus the deeps explore. He steers securely and discovers far, led by the light of the Maeonian star. Poets are raised along unconfined and free, still fond and proud of savage liberties, received his laws and stood convinced 'twas fit, who conquered nature should preside over wit. Horace still charms with graceful negligence, and without method talks us into sense, will like a friend familiarly convey the truest notion in the easiest way. He who supreme in judgment as in wit might boldly censure as he boldly write, yet judged with coolness though he sung with fire. His precepts teach but what his works inspire. Our critics take a contrary extreme. They judge with fury, but they write with phlegm. Nor suffer Horace more in wrong translation by wits than critics in a wrong quotation. See Dionysius Homer's thoughts refined, and call new beauties forth from every line. Fancy and art in gay Petronius please, the scholar's learning with the courtier's ease. In grave Quintilian's copious work we find the justest rules and clearest method joined. Thus useful arms in magazines we place, all ranked in order and disposed with grace, but less to please the eye than arm the hand, still fit for use and ready at command. Be bold, Longinus, all the nine inspire, and bless their critics with a poet's fire. An ardent judge, who zealous in his trust, with warmth gives sentence, yet is always just, whose own example strengthens all his laws, and is himself that great sublime he draws. Thus long succeeding critics just reigned, license repressed, and useful laws ordained. Learning and Rome alike in empire grew, and art still followed where her eagles flew. From the same foes at last both fell their dome, and the same age saw learning fall on Rome, with tyranny then superstition joined, as that the body disenslaved the mind. Much was believed, but little understood, and to the dull was construed to be good. A second deluge, learning thus overrun, and the monk finished what the gods begun. At length Erasmus, that great injured name, the glory of the priesthood and shame, stemmed the wild torrent of the barbarous age, and drove those holy vandals off the stage. But see, each muse in Leo's golden days starts from her trance,
and dreams how withers bay. Rome's ancient genius, o'er its ruins spread, shakes off the dust and rears his reverence dead. Then sculpture and her sister's art revive. Stones leaped to form, and rocks began to live. With sweeter notes each rising temple rung, a Raphael painted, and the Vitor's sung, immortal Vitor, on whose honor brow the poet's bays and the critic's ivy grow. Cremona now shall ever boast thy name, as next in place of Mantua, next in fame. But some by impious arms from Latina chased, their ancient bound, the banished muses passed. Tense art overawed the northern world advanced, but critics learning flourished most in France. The rules a nation born to serve obey, and Boileau's still right of Horace sways. But we brave Britons foreign laws despised, and kept unconquered and uncivilized. Fierce for the liberties of wit and bold, we still defied the Romans as of old. Yet some they were, among the sounder few, of those who less presumed and better knew, who durst assert the just or ancient cause, and here restored with fundamental law. Such was the Muse, whose rules and practice tell Nature's chief masterpiece is writing well. Such was Roscommon, not more learned than good, with manners generous as his noble blood. To him the wit of Greece and Rome was known, and every author's merit but his own. Such late was Walsh, the Muse's judge and friend, who justly knew to blame or to commend, to fail in mild, but zealous for desert, the clearest head and the sincerest heart. This humble praise I lamented shade receive, this praise at least a grateful Muse may give. The Muse whose early voice who you taught to sing, prescribed her height and pruned her tender wing. Her guide now lost, no more attempts to rise, but in low numbers short excursion tries, content if hence the unlearned their wants may view. The learned reflect on what before they knew. Careless of censure, not too fond of fame, still pleased to praise, yet not afraid to blame.
Averse alike to flatter or offend, not free from fault, not yet too vain to mend. End of part 3. End of An Essay on Criticism by Alexandra Pope.
Not win the mistress, wooed the maid. Against the poets, their own arms they turned, sure to hate most the men from whom they learned. So modern apothecaries taught the art, by doctors' bills, to play the doctor's part. Bold in the practice of mistaken rules, prescribe apply, and call your masters fools. Some on the leaves of ancient author prey, nor time nor moths ever spoiled so much as they. Some dreary plains without invention's aid write dull receipts how poems may be made. These leave the sense they're learning to display, and those explain the meaning quite away. You then, whose judgment the right cause would stare, know well each ancient's proper character, his fabled subject scope in every page, religion, country, genius of his age. Without all this at once before your eyes, cavil you may, but never criticize. Be Homer's works your study and delight, read them by day and meditate by night. Thence form your judgment, thence your maxim spring, and trace the muses upward to their spring. Still with itself compared his text peruse, and let the comments be the man's muse. When first young Mero in his boundless mind a work stout blood outlast immortal Rome resign, perhaps he seemed to both the critics the whole. Each motion guides and every nerve sustains, itself unseen, but in the effect remains. Some to whom heaven in wits has been profuse, want as much more to turn it to its use, for wit and judgment often at strife, though men each other's aid, like man and wife. 'Tis more to guide than spare the muse's steed, restrain his fury than provoke his speed. The winged cursor Like a generous horse shows most true mettle when you check his course. Those rules of old discovered not devised are nature still, but nature methodized. Nature, like liberty, is but restrained by the same laws which first herself ordained. Here her learned grace her useful rules indicts, when to repress and when indulge our flight. High on Parnassus top her son she showed, and pointed out those arduous parts they threwed. Held from afar aloft the immortal prize, and urged the rest by equal steps to rise. Just precepts, thus from great examples given, she drew from them what they derived from heaven. The generous critic fanned the poet's fire, and taught the world with reason to admire. Then criticisms the muse's handmaid proved, to trace her charms and make her more beloved. But following wit from that intention strayed, who could not but faintly are drawn right. But at the slightest sketch if justly traced, is by ill colouring but the more disgraced. So by forced learning is good sense defaced. Some are bewildered in the maze of school, and some made coxcombs nature meant but fools. In search of wit, these lose their common sense, and then turn critics in their own defense. Each burns alike who can or cannot write, or with the rivals, or when your next spite. All fools are still and itching to do right, and fain would be upon the life in sight. If Mevius scribble in Apollo's pipe, there are who judge still worse than he can write. Some have at first for wits, and then poets past, turned critics next, and proved plain fools at last. Some neither can for wits nor critics pass as heavy mules, and neither horse nor ass. Those half-learned witlings, numerous in our isles, as half-formed insects on the banks of Nile. Unfinished things one knows not what to call, their generation so equivocal. To tell them would 100 tongues require, or one vain wit that might 100 tire. But you who seek to give a merit fame, and justly bear a critic's noble name, be sure yourself and your own reach to know how far your genius, taste, and learning go. Launch not beyond your depth, but be discreet, and mark that point where sense and dullness meet. Nature to all things fixed the limits fit, and wisely curbed proud man's pretending wit. As on the land, while here the ocean gained, in other parts it leaves white sandy plains. Thus in the souls where memory prevails, the solid power of understanding fails. Where beams of warm imagination play, the memory's soft figure melt away. One science only will one genius fit, so vast is art, so narrow human width. Not only bounded to peculiar art, but often those confined to single parts. Like kings, we lose the conquest gained before by vain ambitions still to make them more. Each might his several province well command, would all but stoop to what they understand. First follow nature, and your judgment frame by her just standards, which is still the same. Unerring nature still divinely bright, one clear, unchanged, and universal light. Life, force, and beauty must to all impart at once the source and end and test of art. Art, from that fund each just supply provides, work without show and without pomp resides. In some fair body does the informing soul, with spirits feed, with vigor fills the
Part 1 of an essay on criticism. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. An essay on criticism by Alexandra Pope, Part 1.
'Tis hard to say if greater want of skill appear in writing or in judging ill, but of the two less dangerous is the offence, to tire our patience than mislead our sense. Some few in that, but numbers err in these. 10 censure wrong for one who writes amiss. A fool might want himself alone expose, none one in verse, makes many more in prose. 'Tis with our judgment as our watch is none, go just alike, yet each believes his own. In poets as true genius is but rare, true taste is seldom the critics share. Both must alike from heaven derive their light, these born to judge as well as those to write. Let such teach others who themselves excel, and censure freely who have written well. Authors are partial to their wits, 'tis true, but are not critics to their judgment too? Yet if we look more closely we shall find most have the seeds of judgment in their mind. Nature affords at least a glimmering light. The lines, though touched